I'm doing values clarification and self-awareness tonight. And I'm from Piedmont Community Services, where I have been the prevention manager for 20 years. Before that, I worked for St. Joseph's Church, and before that, I taught at FC when it was a high school. So I've been around doing this stuff for a long time. And we're going to start out tonight talking about self-awareness. And what that is really called today is emotional intelligence. Have y'all heard that term, emotional intelligence? It's kind of a new thing that has only been really talked about in the last 10 or maybe 15 years. Daniel Goleman from Harvard wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, and then after that came out all kinds of books about emotional intelligence in the workplace and raising emotionally intelligent children and things like that. So emotional intelligence is kind of the catchword now, but really it's all about self-awareness. So I started out, we're going to look at this first thing, which is steps to social competence. And it says the first step to social competence is self-awareness, and that's recognizing a feeling as it happens. And so that sounds really common sense, like, well, I recognize my feelings when they happen, but do we really recognize our feelings when they happen, or do we ignore them, cover them up, try to pretend like we don't have them? What we really need to work on is recognizing what the real feeling we have is when we have a feeling, so that we know, this is what I'm feeling. And that's part of emotional intelligence, because we need to be able to talk about our feelings to other people. That helps us manage our feelings. But the first step is being aware of them and recognizing them, and then being able to say to yourself, it's okay for me to have this feeling. It's all right, you know. And why do we not do that so easily? Because when we're little kids, what do we hear from people all the time? There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to cry about. There's no reason to be sad. Don't we tell our kids that stuff all the time? And so what the little child is hearing is, well, I thought I was afraid, but they're telling me that that's wrong. Or I thought I was sad, but they're telling me that's wrong, so I must be wrong. And so we start to push our feelings down and deny our feelings, and then sooner or later, we can't even recognize that we're having a feeling. But we need to be able to recognize them, because that helps us to be able to deal with them. Otherwise, feelings kind of deal with us. If we don't deal with them, they deal with us. And everybody around us. So we need to work on how do we get to know what that feeling is. And then the next step is managing those emotions. Once we are aware of them, then we need to be able to handle them. Because there's nothing wrong with being angry as long as my anger is not going to be taken out on you in a destructive way. Is that true? Now, I know I've had people before tell me that it's a sin to be angry. And some people, unfortunately, actually are taught that. But it's not a sin to be angry. There's nothing wrong with the feeling of anger. It's beating somebody up because you're angry, or punching a hole in the wall, or kicking the dog, or doing something like that when you're angry that's wrong. So if we can recognize, yes, I feel angry, and what am I going to do with it? Well, I'm going to write in my journal about how angry I am, and then I'm going to rip it into shreds and throw it out. Or I'm going to go talk to one of my friends and say, I am so mad that this happened to me. And I'm going to get it all out of my system, but I'm not going to say to myself, I shouldn't be angry. Because then I'm angry and I'm guilty, right? Because then I'm putting guilt on top of the anger, and that makes it even worse. So we want to make sure that we can handle those feelings so that they're appropriate. And then the next one is motivating oneself. Marshaling emotions in the service of a goal. Emotional self-control, delaying gratification, and stifling impulses. So in other words, we want to be able to not always act on the feelings that we have. We want to be able to say, right now, I just really want to go out and have a good time and have fun, but I have work to do. And when I get done with the work, then I'll reward myself by having fun. That is a really important skill at being emotionally intelligent, isn't it? To be able to say, I'm going to wait for that gratification. I'm going to delay it till a later time rather than do what I want to do now instead of what I should do. And then I might not even get to what I should do. So one of the ways that they first started talking about emotional intelligence is Daniel Goleman took a bunch of little 4-year-olds and they did the marshmallow test. And what that is, have y'all ever heard of the marshmallow test? Okay, well, they took these little 4-year-old kids and they put them in a room and they sat them down one at a time and they talked to them and they said, do you like marshmallows? And they got kids that did like marshmallows and they said, well, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I'm going to put this marshmallow here on this plate in front of you and then I'm going to leave the room for a little while. And when I come back, if you haven't eaten that marshmallow yet, I'm going to give you 2 marshmallows. But if the marshmallow's gone, that's all you get. And then they leave the room. And then they watch through a 2-way mirror. They watch the kids to see what they did. And they have a couple of things on YouTube now where you can just Google in marshmallow tests and it'll show you some of these kids. Some of them, they've deviated from the original test, but it really is funny to watch them because they'll look up at the ceiling. They try not to look at the marshmallow. Some of them will touch the marshmallow, and some of them pick it up and smell it, and might even taste it and put it back down. They want that marshmallow so bad, and some of them just go right ahead and eat it. As soon as the person leaves, they stick it in their mouth and it's gone. So, it's really funny to watch it. But what they did was they watched how did these kids deal with something in front of them that they wanted, that they could have twice as much of if they could just have enough self-control to wait. And then they watched these kids all through school and all through they watched them for 15 years and observed what happens to the kids. How did the kids do that ate the marshmallow right away versus the kids that were able to control themselves and sit there and twiddle their thumbs or sing themselves a song or look around the room and not eat that marshmallow until somebody came back in. And what they found out was that the kids that became the most successful were the ones that were able to have that willpower and self-control and not eat that marshmallow right away, even if they had a lower IQ than some of the other kids. So what they found out, that's when they started calling it emotional intelligence, and they talked about your EQ instead of your IQ. What they found out was that's more important to your success than being extremely intelligent. There's a new book out that I started reading called The Outliers. Has anybody read that? It's really a neat book. It's about what makes people successful. And it looks at all different kinds of groups of really successful people, like the successful hockey players in Canada and all different kinds of groups, and it says what makes people really successful. And of course, it goes back to the emotional intelligence for some of it. I mean, that you hear of people that are just super geniuses, but they have no emotional intelligence. They can't interact with people. They can't socialize, and they really don't become what we would consider successful. They might live as hermits or something and never even live up to their full potential because they don't know how to interact with the world. So EQ is a really interesting thing, and part of that is being able to delay your gratification and stifle your impulses. Now, one of the bad things about this is that the front part of your brain, your frontal lobe, is the last part to fully develop. So when you're a kid, you know how little kids, they just do whatever they want to do until you teach them not to do it. Put them in timeout or whatever you have to do. They just do what they want to do because they don't know how to stifle their impulses, and we have to teach them that. But unfortunately, the part of your brain that controls that doesn't finish developing until you're about 24 years old. So we look at teenagers and, we look at the behavior teenagers have sometimes and we're like, what was she thinking? Or what was he thinking? Well, they're not thinking with a fully developed brain. They're thinking with most of a brain, but not a whole brain. And the whole part that they're missing is the part that says, think this through before you do it. You know, weigh the pros and cons. Look at the consequences that might come to you and decide, do I really want to do this? Or do I want to hold off on this? So when you're 16 and you have an exam to study for and all your friends are saying, hey, come on, we're going to go out, we're going to have a good time. It doesn't matter if you study, you'll do okay. And that impulse control isn't really there yet. And you say, oh, well, I'll probably do okay on my test. I'm just going to go out and have fun. And then you come up with a big fat F on your test the next day. You say, maybe I should have stayed in and studied instead of going out with my friends and having a good time. So being able to stifle those impulses is huge. When we talk about delaying gratification, I always think of eating your icing before your cake. But an even bigger one would be eating the cake before the meal, right? Delaying gratification means that I hold off on what I really want. You know what the worst, anti-delayed gratification is? Credit cards. What do credit cards tell us? You can have it now. You don't have to wait till you earn it. You don't have to wait till you save for it. You can have it now. And so we go out and buy things we can't afford. We go out and buy things that we're going to have to work to pay off for months in advance and months ahead because we believe we can have it now and we don't have to wait. And so what does that do? It teaches us not to delay our gratification. You know, you want something you can't afford, put it on plastic. Get it now. And you don't have to work for it. Unfortunately, then, you have to work for it plus all the interest and anything else that comes up in the meantime that you then can't have or put on plastic and add more and more to it. So I think credit cards are a great example of how we don't delay our gratification. So then we're going to look at the next one is empathy. The next step to social competence is empathy, recognizing emotions in others. So first we want to recognize our own emotions and be able to say, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel discouraged. But we also want to be able to look at somebody else and say, I think she feels discouraged. I think she feels afraid. I think she feels disappointed. And be able to recognize that somebody else has a feeling. What happens if we can't show empathy towards other people? What do you think happens then?
Become judgmental, maybe?
That's one aspect of it. We may become very judgmental of other people because we can't put ourselves in their shoes, right? But the other thing is we can do things to people without being aware of how it makes them feel. Bullies don't have empathy, do they? If you can bully somebody that's weaker than you and hurt somebody that's weaker than you, then you probably are not real good at putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And unfortunately, you know, one of the things that they found is that a common denominator among criminals who hurt people, you know, violent criminals, is they don't know how to feel empathy for other people. So what happens is I can knock you down and rob you and not think a thing about how it made you feel and walk away and be okay with myself because I don't have empathy. Does that make sense? So another part of the social competence is being able to recognize emotions in others. And then the last one, this is the key to life, I think. The ability to handle relationships. You know, if our success was always judged on our relationships, a lot of people that think they're successful wouldn't turn out so good, would they? How we handle our relationships. Do you have people that you love that love you? Do you have people that actually want to spend time with you? You know, do you have people that you could reach out to when you need a friend? That shows you if you're socially competent, is how you handle relationships. And so when we look at emotional intelligence, a lot of times what we see is people who are very intelligent IQ-wise, but they can't stay in a relationship. They can't make a relationship work or go. And why would that be? Because of all these other things. They can't manage their emotions. They can't delay their gratification. They can't recognize other people's feelings. So all of those things end up getting in the way of them having a successful relationship. So that's all about the steps to social competence. But now I want to talk a little bit about back at number 1, self-awareness, recognizing a feeling as it happens. And we have to be able to tell the difference between a feeling and a thought. Because a thought is just something that we have. It comes into our head, we have this thought. But the thought makes a difference in how we feel. And a feeling is more who you are than what you're thinking. Does that make sense? So what I wanted to think about is, where is my ABC thing? When we do something, when something happens to us, I think I have it in here. Yeah, when something happens to us, we have an event. And then we end up having feelings about the event. But in between the event and the feelings are the thoughts we have about the event. And they make all the difference in our feelings. Now, when we're talking about physical events, physical feelings come from an event. There's no thoughts involved in that. A bee stings you, it hurts. You don't have to think, oh, I just got stung by a bee. I think that hurts. No. You get stung by a bee, you have a feeling. So we're not talking about physical feelings, we're talking about emotions. But when an event happens to me, my feeling I end up with because of the event depends on the thoughts I have around that event. Now, how many of you think that's true? Yeah? So do you think then the same event could happen to all 5, 6 of us in this room? And if we had different thoughts about the event, we'd all have different feelings about it? Yeah. And that happens all the time, doesn't it? So the example I like to give is, let's say my husband buys me flowers, which he doesn't because he doesn't like it. Number 1, we were poor when we got together, so we didn't have money for flowers. And number 2, he just doesn't think about it anymore. So he doesn't buy me flowers. But let's just say that he bought me flowers, and he sent me this big bouquet of roses to work, which would be really exciting, because then all my friends would see my flowers. Okay, so I get these flowers at work. What are some of the thoughts that I could have about getting the flowers?
Oh, he loves me so much.
Okay.
He cares about me.
He loves me so much. He cares about me.
And then I would think, oh my gosh, that came out of our debit card. How much did they cost?
Okay, so you might think, oh gosh, how much did that cost? And worry about your budget and think, well, I always thought when we were first married, buy me a pair of shoes. Don't spend money on something that's going to be dead next week. Because we didn't have money for flowers. So, and what did you say back there? I heard another one of those thoughts. Like, what did he do? I might be thinking, what did he do? That all of a sudden I get this huge bouquet of roses.
Must have been something pretty big.
Must have been something pretty big. Okay, so what else could I think? Anything else? Well, let's examine these. So, if he sends me flowers and I think, oh, he loves me, that is so sweet, and what's the feeling I'm going to have? Happy, loved, appreciative. That's probably the feeling he was going for when he spent $80, right? Okay, now if I think, why did he waste money on flowers when I need so many other things? What do you think the feeling I'm going to have then is? I might be mad, at least frustrated that he doesn't get it, that we don't have money to waste on things that are going to be dead next week. Okay, what if I think, what has he done? Then what feeling am I going to have? Suspicious, angry. Okay, so we can all see that the feeling I end up with totally depends on the thoughts that are going on in my head. It has nothing to do really with the event. With the same event, the feeling I'm going to end up with are based on the thoughts I have about that feeling. So the good news about that is that when we have an event happen to us and we have feelings we wish we could change, we can change our thoughts, and that will help us change our feelings. So I think even something like somebody dying is an event that your beliefs have a lot to do with your feelings. Because let's say I'm somebody that doesn't believe in anything after this life, that you just live until you die and then it's over and there's nothing. What's that going to make me feel like if somebody dies? Probably more despairing, not very hopeful. If I think they're in a better place, they're out of their suffering, then my feelings are going to be more positive, right? And of course, I'm still going to have probably feelings of I miss that person, but I can change the real depressive thoughts I might have if I change, or feelings I might have if I change some of the thoughts that I have surrounding that person. Like choosing to remember the good times we had together and stuff like that instead of dwelling on the fact that the person's no longer with me. So I think that's the good news about this, is that when an event happens, no matter how bad it is, if I look at the thoughts that I'm having about that event, then I can change some of the feelings that I'm having about that event. And I can help myself change my mood. I can help myself to feel better about things. One of the examples I like to give about that is when I get up in the morning, I say an expletive every morning when that alarm clock wakes me up. I hate to get up in the morning. I hate it. And when that alarm clock goes off, out that word comes right out of my mouth. It's like programmed. But then I say to myself, well, thank God I can wake up. And thank God I have a reason to wake up. Like I have a job to go to. And thank God I love the job that I have to go to. And I'm going to have probably a pretty good day because of all of that. And my body doesn't feel so bad that when I get out of bed, I can actually move around and feel okay. So I have to remind myself of all those thoughts about getting up in the morning to make myself feel better about getting up. I still say the word, it's an automatic reflex. I can't change that. It's like Pavlov's dog, you know. You ring the bell and he starts salivating. Well, my alarm goes off and that word just pops out of my mouth. My dog probably thinks that means get up. Oh, Mom is saying it. Okay, so now we're going to give you a chance to talk for a minute. We're going to say, what is one thought that you had about coming here tonight, and what is one feeling that you had about coming here tonight? And I'll go first, so you can think. The thought that I had two thoughts. I had kind of mixed feelings and mixed thoughts because I love to teach this contact class. I think the information in here is just fun. And so it's my favorite thing to teach. I really enjoy it. So I look forward to it. So my thought was, I get to teach self-awareness and values, and that'll be nice. But my other thought was I hated to leave my mom because I was gone all day, came home, ate dinner with her, left her again. So I had a little mixed feelings about that. So, who wants to go first? What are your thoughts and feelings?
Well, I felt a little frustrated because I have so much laundry to do. And it's just piling up because I've been here, 2 nights a week.
Yeah.
But I was looking forward to it too, to get to hear you, and obligated because I said I would do it.
Yeah. Okay. Who wants to go next? Everybody gets a chance.
Well, I thought about trying to make it here on time because I was doing a whole lot of other stuff before I came in here.
Okay.
I was tired, so I was worried about going to sleep and skipping it maybe. And then when I came here,
actually until about 3 o'clock this afternoon. And so I said, oh, I better get ready to go. And then I felt good because it's good to be back and talking about these things. I like doing that. So that's cool. So that was what I was feeling.
Okay.
I was thinking about getting here because it's such frustrating with what I'm going through right now with my knee and stuff, but I felt joyful because I love the fact of learning new things and helping others because I have 7 grandkids.
You have 7
Yes, ma'am.
7
Grandkids.
grandkids. She doesn't look old enough to have any grandkids. Wow. Okay. Do you want to share or are you just observing? Just observing. Okay. All right. He's just working here. Okay, so we talked about that. And now we're going to talk about this sheet, your Joe Harry window. And the Joe Harry window, anybody ever hear of Joe Harry before? Joe Harry window? I do. Number one, I love it because it's called Joe Harry because 2 guys, Joe and Harry, made it up. And I think it's so funny that they named it after themselves and called it the Joe Harry window. It's called a window because as you can see it, if you ignore these little dotted lines in here, it kind of looks like a big window pane with 4 windows. And so that's what they decided to call it. But this is about knowing yourself. It's about self-awareness. And the first part, you see across this side is what's known to yourself. And this side is unknown to yourself. And across here, we're going to go kind of sideways. First, we have the public pane, the public window pane, and that's the one that has all the other words in it. And the public pane is what I know about myself and most other people can see about me. If they know me, they know this about me. And then you don't have to be my closest friend. You can just be one of my acquaintances. And that's what you know about me, that I know about myself. And then over here is the blind part. And that part is other people know it about me, but I don't know it about myself. So if you watch me in action and you get to know me well, there are things that you know about my values and my beliefs and the things that I do and don't do that you know about me, that I may be unaware of. So for instance, let's say I was a person who thought that I was very generous with other people, but you knew enough about me to know that, she gives things to other people, but she doesn't give out of her need. She only gives off the top, okay? And she doesn't like to give up her time or really give up things that matter a lot to her. So I may be walking around in the world thinking, well, I'm a very generous person and I give to lots of people and I do, but the people that are around me, my family, my friends, my coworkers go, she's really not that giving, that generous like she thinks she is. Okay, so that's the blind window. And then down here we have the hidden window. And that's the part that I know about myself, but I don't want anybody else to know about me. I'm keeping those cards close to my vest. It's like, I know who I really am. There are things about myself that I know, but I surely do not want the whole world to know these things about me. So I keep those to myself. And then over here in this window, those are the things that are unknown to me, but also unknown to others. So there are things about myself that I'm going to discover as time goes on. When I'm 80, there might be things that I know about myself that I didn't know at 60. When I'm 60, there will be things I know about myself that I might not have known at 40. Wouldn't you all agree with that? Even at 25, there's things that we know about ourselves that we probably wouldn't have known when we were 15. So life is always kind of a journey of discovery, of self-discovery. We're finding out who we really are until we can, hopefully at the end of our journey, we really know our authentic self. But that's a lifelong process of getting to know really the person that you truly are. So how do we get to that? The goal would be to make these windows get larger and larger and larger so that the other windows are smaller. We want the public window to be the one that's the largest. We want it to be the most open. That's how we would call ourselves authentic. I'm an authentic or genuine person. What you see is who I am. Who I know I am is who you know I am. And I know mostly everything about myself that there is to know. Okay? Does that make sense? So how does that happen? Well, I have to ask for feedback so that I say to somebody, well, I think I'm pretty generous. What do y'all think about me? And I have to be willing to hear from other people what they think. Or, lots of times people just give us feedback, don't they? They just give us information about ourselves that we didn't even ask for, don't they? That happens all the time. It happens with friends, it happens with partners, it happens with lots of people. They just give us information about ourselves that may be wanted or unwanted and definitely not asked for. Well, if we want to grow here, then we need to take that feedback that we get from other people and say, what about this could be true? Our normal tendency is, let's say I'm a person who thinks I'm really generous, but you have seen that I'm not. And so you say to me sometime when I'm saying, oh, well, I give to people all the time. I give so much, that I'm like, a Rockefeller. I'm always writing checks and giving my free time and all this other stuff. And you're sitting there and you're going, should I tell her that she really isn't that generous because that $100 check she wrote was just a drop in the bucket to what she could have given? Or, she chose to go shopping all day Saturday when we were having a day of caring in Martinsville and she could have been helping instead of shopping. Should I tell her about herself? And so then you decide you will tell me about myself. And the key then is, what do I do with that? Do I immediately say, I am not at all like that? You just are jealous of me. Or you have a problem, or you have an issue with me. Don't we do that lots of times when we get feedback from people? It's their problem. And we immediately cast the feedback aside. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to mull it over. It's just, take it back. I don't want it. So the key to opening this window is taking that feedback and saying, well, she could be jealous of me, and she could have her own issues, but maybe there's a little grain of truth to this, and how can I look at this and see myself better? Is there a mirror here that I can see myself a little bit clearer in if I accept that feedback and think about it? So asking for feedback and then openly hearing feedback and taking it for what it's worth is a way to make the blind side smaller and the open side bigger. And then the other way we make the open side bigger is by telling, disclosing to other people some of the things about ourselves that we know that we just don't want anybody else to know about. Because God, if you knew it about me, you wouldn't like me anymore, right? If you knew it about me, you wouldn't respect me as much. So I can't let you know this about me. So if I'm walking around trying to hide all this stuff, and let's think about somebody like, say, Tiger Woods. Here was Tiger Woods, married, had a couple children, great golfer, a big champion, loved his father. Everybody could see all of those things about him, couldn't we? But what we didn't see was all that hidden stuff, that he had all these affairs with these other women, he did raunchy stuff. He was, he really was a pretty immoral person. But we didn't see that. How much energy do you think did it take from him to keep all that stuff hidden. Not only from all of us, but from his wife, from his father, from his closest friends, because he didn't probably want anybody to know that he was like that. So the problem is, when it comes to self-awareness, the more we try not to know who we really are, the more energy it takes away from us being who we really are and being happy with ourselves. So you look at somebody like him and you think, well, in the end, if he could look at all of this and say, oh my God, I really messed up, I got to change my life, I got to be a better person. If he could take time to do all of that and repent and really change his life, then this will be a great thing for him. That's why, the Chinese sign for, what's the word? The little thing, crisis. The Chinese sign for crisis means also opportunity, because there almost always is an opportunity in a crisis. If we can come to terms with the crisis, if we can get past the crisis, there's an opportunity in it, even if for nothing else but to learn something about ourselves, to learn what I'm capable of, what I can handle, what I can't handle, to learn how strong I am, to learn how deep my faith is. Does that make sense? So almost always there's an opportunity. So we want to be able to disclose to other people who we really are. And now, do we want to go tell everybody we know all of our dirty laundry? No. And we don't ever want to tell our dirty laundry on the first date. We want to let the dirty laundry seep out just a little bit at a time. Test the waters, we want to tell a little bit and then see how people are handling it. Tell a little bit more and how are they handling it. You don't want to vomit it all up the first time you meet somebody, because that is a sure sign of having not very good mental health. You don't have very good mental health if you have to tell all your stuff the first time you meet people. And do we know people like that?
Oh, yes.
I know plenty of people like that. Do y'all know people like that? As soon as they meet somebody, they're telling them all this stuff, and you're kind of like, zip it. Shut up. Why are you telling that stuff? Some of us might even have family members that like to let the cat out of the bag. So we're out with our family members, with our friends, and this one's telling everything. The cutest thing was one time, I used to do counseling groups for children of alcoholics and children of divorced parents and stuff like that in the schools. And I had twins in one of my classes. And the one twin would come, and we always started off the group with highs and lows, and the highs and lows were a good thing that happened to you this week and something that wasn't so good that happened to you this week. The one twin would sit there and go, well, everything was really just fine at my house this week. I can't think of any lows. Everything was, okay, and we didn't have any problems. And then the other twin would go, what are you saying? Mom got drunk last night. They had a big fight, and and he threw her out of the house, and blah, 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 blah. And the other twin's just kind of sitting there like, we're not talking about that. And it was just so funny to watch these two, obviously living the same exact life, but one of them wanted to spill the beans about everything. And you know what? Really, in that situation, she was the healthier person, because that was a counseling group. That was your opportunity to spill the beans. And the one who wouldn't spill the beans, the one that was trying to hide everything, and everything's hunky-dory, everything's fine in our house, and we're not talking about it, she ended up having a lot more issues as they got older than the one who was able to say, no, everything isn't fine in our house. This is going on and that's going on. But that's okay in a counseling group. But you see people who do that in a social group. They meet. One of my sons dated a girl that told him stuff I could not believe all about her family. He'd only known her for like 2 weeks. And she's telling him that her father was a Colombian drug dealer, and somebody tried to blow up her car, and that she was on the run from her family, and blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, and he wanted to bring her to our house for the Easter break from college. And I was like, this is my concern. If all this stuff is true, it might be scary to have her come and spend a week at our house. And if all this stuff isn't true, she's crazy. And that's kind of scary too. So either way, I'm very concerned about this person. Because if all that stuff was true, I have no judgment on her if all that's true, but you don't tell it to somebody you've known for 2 weeks, do you? I mean, that would be the stuff that as time went on and you became very close to each other and were maybe even thinking about marriage, then you might want to say, let me tell you a little bit more about my background than I've told you in the past, because you might need to know this, and this will tell you more about who I am. So anyway, that's the Joe Harry window. We want to look at trying to make the open window the biggest and the other windows get smaller as time goes on. How do we find out about this one, the unknown to ourselves and unknown to others? We can find out through dreams. We can find out through counseling. We can find out through journaling. Lots of things that can help us become more aware of who we really are. And we can find out from paying attention to all those things. Because I can have things happen in my life, but I don't pay attention to them. If I'm paying attention to them, they might actually tell me something about myself. Okay? Anybody have any questions about Joe Harry? No? Do you like Joe Harry? Did you find out something that you can help yourself with from hearing all that? It was one of my favorite things to learn in my journey, was to find out about that, because it just made so much sense to me. And I thought, I really, I'm on a journey of self-awareness. I want to know who I am. By the time I'm gone, I want to know who I was, why I showed up here, and what I had to do. And so to me, learning that stuff is really important and helpful. Okay, the last thing I gave you for the self-awareness is emotional intelligence. And this is being able to look at your emotional awareness, your emotional sensitivity, and your emotion management. And I just gave you this for yourself. This is one of those tools that you can use for self-reflection. We're not going to look at it tonight, really. We're not going to go over it. But this is something that you can take it home, and sometime between now and your next time you meet, you might look it over and do some of the things on there, or think about some of those things on there and say, how does that apply to me? And what can I learn about myself from it? Okay, now we're going to talk about values, because values tell us a lot about who we are too, don't they? And sometimes we think that we have values that when push comes to shove, we don't really have. And that again goes back to that Joe Harry window, because I may think this about myself, but I might really find out that other people know differently. And to put that in a nutshell, have you seen those, the saying, if they were persecuting Christians today, would there be enough evidence against you to prove that you are one? Religion aside, I like that, because I think there are a lot of people that walk around saying that they have a certain faith, but other than what they say, you don't see a whole lot of it. So that would be an example of that. This is who I think I am, but this is who you know I am. So when we look at our values, we can find out more about ourselves too, more about our self-awareness. So what is a value? Well, a value is something that has to satisfy 7 criteria. And here they are. 1, it's freely chosen, not imposed on a person. 2, it's chosen from alternatives. So I have to have other choices. If it's the only choice I have, then I may not really be choosing it, right? I can't be a choice if I don't know of any other options. It emerges after the options have been make a copy of that from now on. What is a value? Actually, I have one. How about I give that to you? And okay.
Yeah, we didn't have that last one either.
Okay. Because it used to be in their notebook, so I quit making copies of it. And it's not impulsive or thoughtless. It's something that you understood, you were able to weigh the pros and cons and think it over. Then here's the next one. A person is happy with it. It's prized, cherished, esteemed, respected, and held dear. So I'm happy that I have this value. With a sad face, because this is what I have to do in life, it makes me happy to have this value. And I'm proud of it. And I'm publicly affirming it. And people who know me know that it's a value for me. And then it gives direction to my actual living. You do something about it, and it reappears and influences your pattern of life. So in order to be a true value, it has to be chosen, it has to be prized, and it has to be something that drives you and gives you a pattern in your life. So when we think of what are our values, a lot of times we think of really what are our beliefs. Because we have lots of beliefs about things. But when we really stop and think about them, are they driving our life? Could you see a consistent pattern in my life? In other words, one example for me is I believe in recycling. I think recycling is a wonderful thing. And I so admire people who do it. But I don't, because it takes too much work for me. And so it's not something that is truly a value for me. It's a belief for me. I believe in it. I wish I could make myself do it, but I would be making myself do it. And that's not a value. A value is when I do it because I love it and it makes me happy and proud of myself and I enjoy doing it. Does that make sense? Exercise. I think exercise is wonderful. I believe in exercise. But trust me, if it was a value, it's not a value in my life. It's something that, every once in a while I make myself do it for a while, and then you might even hear me say, I really do like exercising. But I'll bet you 2 years later I'm not still doing it. So it's not a pattern in my life. It's not something that I really love to do. So what is something that I value? Something that brings you here. Something about your values. Did you have better things to do? You could be home watching TV. There's good TV shows on tonight. you could be home sleeping. You could be doing all kinds of different things that might be more fun. But you chose to come here. And the fact that you chose to come here says something about what you value in life, right? So values are determined by where you spend your thoughts, your time, and your money. Where is your life focus? That shows you what your values are. So I'm going to ask you all to tell one of your values. First, I'm going to tell mine, because I told you my beliefs, they weren't values. But one of my strongest values, I used to say, is helping people. I had this trainings ago that made me realize that, it's not really helping people that is my value. It is having a meaningful life is my value. I want to have a meaningful life. And often that involves me helping other people. But it's not just helping other people that I do to give myself a meaningful life. I want to have a meaningful life. And so that is kind of my driving value. Looking for volunteer opportunities that I could do, like teaching mentally handicapped children how to swim. And I was a candy striper in a nursing home. And then I ended up, when I was in college, learning how to do something like Contact. In Delaware, we called it the Drug Information Action Line, DIAL, because the reason it was started there was because of substance abuse. At the time, volunteered to give my time, and then they were going to make me do 14 weeks of training. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm giving you my time, and you're going to make me do this? But it was the best training I ever got in my life, because it taught me how to listen to people, and it taught me things like we're talking about tonight, self-awareness and stuff like that. To do something for other people, and what was the bottom line in that? It made me feel like there was a reason for me to be here. It gave me a meaningful life. I want to know, I know lots of people that is not a value for them. It doesn't make them better or worse for me. It's just not their value. Their value is more about how much fun they can have, or the most important one is having a meaningful life. So that also directed the fact that I ended up becoming a prevention specialist and working for Piedmont Community Services. So it really drove all of my life, because what I do for a living helps me to feel like I have a meaningful life. I prize it. Hopefully, if you know me, you know that that's what I do with my life. And it's chosen out of alternatives. I could do whatever I wanted to for a career or for what I do with my free time, but that's what I chose to do. And it's been a pattern in my life. So, let me hear from y'all. All the conditions that make something a value, what is it that you value? She went first last time, so we'll let her go last this time. You went last time, so we're going to make you go first.
Like gradually pretty much having to be proud that that I had made some kind of difference in somebody else's life. I like to make people smile. That's why I've been doing fast food since I was 15. I like to make somebody day.
Value.
I value family, take care of family, grandmother, my mother, and everybody else, just being there for me. And also take care of friends and good friends, just being there for them when they need it, when I'm needed.
What she said. Okay?
I guess as well as wanting to make, to have a meaningful life, I really identified with what you were saying, but I also value diversity, and to the point where I will do things just to try something different. Incorporating that in my life, so I guess that's a value I have.
Okay. Did you think of one?
I guess just doing for others, and trying to be there for people.
Okay. All right, so where do your values come from? Now, value that we have. And so where do we get our values? Where do people get values? They get them from their families. And sometimes their families push them towards a value different from their family. If your family is all about all the time, they grow up in that family and say, that's the last thing I want to have for the rest of my life. So they still gave you the value that you have, didn't they? Because of that value, because of that lifestyle, you chose to live something different. So our families give us our values. If you're telling your children one thing, but your life is showing something different, and boy, kids are really good at being able to see what's blind in you, aren't they? They can pick it out like that. They say, I don't really think you're like that, Dad. So, now, but there was 8 years difference between the first and the last. And our family was a different family for the first child than it was for the last child. Even though my husband and I are still married, we were, you know, an intact family the whole time. But the family that the first child grew up with, Saturday, wanted to hang out with family. We had Disney Channel in our house, and that was pretty much all we watched. Because she was 12, but she had a 9-year-old brother, a 7-year-old brother, and a 4-year-old sister. By the time the 4-year-old sister was 12, so was her life different than the other ones? Yes. Same family, but seeing things through a totally different perspective and a different lens than what the older child saw life through. Just because of her that's kind of like the chicken and the egg. Maybe we choose peers because they share our values, but then they reinforce our values. And so we kind of help each other develop values. And unfortunately, I think we get a lot of our that to our house that cusses and swears and does things we disapprove of and is violent and you know, does all kinds of things that are totally against our values, but we let them in our house and we watch them all the time. And is that we're getting from media. Look at when I was a kid, and I mean, I hate to tell you, but television started when I was a baby, I think. You know, that's when they started having television. But when I was a kid, what we watched on TV was we watched TV shows where, oh my goodness, 2.5 Men, they're jumping in and out of bed with people all the time, and you know exactly what's going on. They're talking about it the whole time, and it's different people. And look at how our values, it's got to change your values when it's constantly bombarding you. And especially our children, because our children grow up with those things. You know how life has changed dramatically. I don't want to get on my alcohol soapbox, but you know, on my prevention. One of the best little videos that I've ever seen, we have this video called This Place, and it talks about how did we get to where we are in our culture today compared to where it was when I was a kid. And it shows how everything kids see today involves alcohol. And so children growing up today, alcohol is just in their face constantly. And unfortunately, the way they use alcohol is because people did. People have been abusing alcohol for centuries. But today, when you see young people, a lot of times their drinking is just to get drunk. That's the goal. person. So, that's a way that media has affected us, because even the alcohol it's our values, and our role models our values. One of the programs that we talk about in prevention is asset building. Have any of you heard of asset building? Asset building comes out of the search insight, feeling close to your family, feeling close to your school, having a religious organization you're involved in, doing community service. Those are all things that role model is a really huge asset for most people. And we all have role models. Some of them are negative role models, and some of them are positive role models. If you have a father or a mother who made really poor choices, that person can still be a role model for you. Choosing to walk in a different path, but either way, then that person was a role model for you. So I'm gonna go around the room again. And for me, it was my grandmother, my mother's mother, who spent the last 5 years of her life living in our house. She was bedridden and couldn't even sit up in the bed without help. And I am a middle child. So when I was a kid, I would come home to the house and my grandmother was bedridden. And she was really out with my grandmother all night. I'd eat my dinner in there in her room with her, and watch TV with her and talk to her. And so she was probably the closest adult that I had at that time. The things that she believed in and admired and thought were important helped become my things that I valued, because who she was. So she was my role model. So who was your role model? And we're going to start with you this time, because you didn't get started with yet.
My role model was my mother. She was a single mother.
Good mother.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of role models.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't good, but there were some things that were just
an and you're going to get up and move to the spot that best matches your answer to the statement. Feel that the feminist movement has had a mostly positive influence.
Which is which?
Agree, disagree, unsure. Feel that the feminist movement has a positive influence. Grab him and drag him. Drag him over there.
We'll let her point.
You don't all have to speak to every question, but if you would like to say why you chose where you're standing, we would love to hear from you.
I think can do anything they want. Not just jobs, but they get out and
Freed us. We no longer have to be Susie Sunshine or, Betsy Baker or whatever.
Just growing up like my mother, I said, she was an athlete. She did things that most men did. So I grew up not believing there was no bounds like that anyway. So.
Do you want to say anything? Okay. All right, next one. Would accept $1 billion to leave the country and never set foot in it again. Accept $1 billion to leave this country and never set foot in it again. That's agree. That's disagree. That's.
But you see, there's a twist to that. If you got $1 million,
Billion.
$1 billion, you can take your family with you. Mm-hmm. See that before I disagreed because I thought, well, I'll take her with me.
The mountains.
Okay, so you wouldn't go because you'd miss the terrain here. You'd miss.
I found myself very comfortable in my little part of the world, and I like to go see other places, but I don't want to. No.
Okay. Either of you want to speak to that?
It's $1 billion.
You can do a lot with that.
How about you? Where would you go? Agree, disagree, or unsure?
I'm unsure because you know how when you go different places, money is U.S. dollars or because the money value changes when you go to different places.
That's
so
true.
It's hard.
I used to say $1 million. I changed it to $1 billion. Getting too hard. It's like, I'm not going anywhere for $1 million. But $1 billion, we see more results. Would be willing to kill a beautiful butterfly by pulling off its wings for an all-expense 1-week vacation anywhere in the world. Agree, disagree, unsure.
It's only a butterfly.
It's not going to live long. No, I wouldn't hurt.
2 minutes?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. That's how long they live?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Back there? You're unsure? All right. How about a cockroach? Would y'all kill a cockroach for a vacation?
Yeah.
Okay, so is it the beauty of the butterfly that we value, or is it,
Well, I have killed a
But they
cockroach.
for less, yes. But would you kill it by pulling off its legs or its wings? Did they have wings? I think they do. But I don't know either. Okay. All right. Let's see. Would change to a job you really didn't like if it offered $10,000 a year more than you now make? Agree, disagree, unsure.
Okay, but you don't have to say you'd stay there, right?
You don't have to say you would stay there. You're changing to a job that pays $10,000 more.
Do you know when you change that it's not going to be?
Yes, you know that it's not going to be a job you like.
I can't do that.
Okay. Why are you unsure?
I don't know, because, you know, you always need money, but, you know.
It's because he's young.
And he doesn't have a job.
Always need-
Okay.
At the same time, you know, you don't want to be somewhere, you know, where you just hate it.
Right.
It's miserable. I hope I'm on the right side. I could not do it. I've done it, and it was miserable. My life was miserable. And I've had opportunities to move from where I'm at for more money, and I've not done it because I like what I do. I like my coworkers, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Not worth the money.
Okay. You want to say anything?
Oh, I just don't do much for money. I mean, you have to make money to live.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that has never been, I'm a child of the 60s. That was not my motivating factor.
Okay.
So,
Not your value.
no.
Okay. Which side are you?
I'm still unsure. I done did jobs I don't like. I've done jobs I don't like. I had to have the money at the time, so. And I'm older generation, so it's, you know, it's kind of hard for us to switch jobs, so.
Okay. All right. Would be willing to murder an innocent victim if it would end world hunger.
Oh my gosh.
Child of the 60s gonna have trouble with this one.
Yeah, I'm just gonna.
Be unsure. Okay. But would be willing to murder an innocent victim if it would end world hunger.
I disagree. Is that
Okay.
right side?
You're in the right place. Why do you disagree?
I just think murder is murder.
Yeah, I'm still not good.
But what about those millions that you're killing by not killing that person?
Yeah. That's a hard one.
It is a hard one.
That's why I chose here.
Yeah. What we would do in that situation may not be what we think we would do in that situation. Wouldn't you all agree? Yeah. And you're unsure? Okay. All right. How about think that corporal punishment is bodily disciplining. Is an effective means of discipline for children. Think that corporal punishment, in other words, spanking, whipping, beating, look at it, is an effective means of discipline for children. You're at the disagree? Okay. And you're at agree?
Yeah.
All right, why don't you tell us why you agree?
I mean, I grew up and I got a lot, and looking back on it now, I guess it depends on the type of child you have, but I needed it because I was pretty bad growing up. And if I didn't have them, I'd probably be doing other stuff that wouldn't be as good.
I think a whipping is fine, but, and I think it's needed, like you say, you know, you've got to pop from, but it can go far. So it's a fine line there of, I mean, I know what I would do, but others, you know, you can't say that you think it's okay because of what other people, you know, they might take it too far. But I agree, kids need a, mine got plenty of problems, but you start looking at schools and, other people whipping your child is a whole different story.
Okay.
I think kids need firm boundaries. I'm all in favor of that. But when I remember thinking this when my kids were little. I would look down at them and they were so small and I was so big that there must have been a way to do it. So that's why I just don't think it. And both my kids are fine.
They grew up okay.
They grew up
And they didn't
okay.
get spanked.
They didn't get spanked. No.
Every once in a while we run into those people. There aren't them out there, but we run into them. Okay. And where are you in this? Agree, disagree, or unsure? You can't straddle that fence back there the whole night. You're going to have have to make a choice.
I got, like I said, I got several grandkids, and some you can put in the time arbitrary and it works, and others you just have to tag tail up. So it's just, I like to say.
Okay. All right, now here comes my next question. Think that corporal punishment could be an effective means of discipline for adults. Now, where are we going to stand? We're moving now. And where are you?
I disagree.
Okay. So why do y'all disagree with that one? Why'd you change?
That's where I think police brutality comes from.
Okay.
They punish adults. Adult can't punish another adult. This one common thing.
You can go too far.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of what you were saying about
You can, yeah.
can go too far.
There are other ways.
Okay, and you're disagreeing also? You want to say anything about it? No. Okay. Think that killing under any circumstances is morally wrong. Think that killing under any circumstances is morally wrong.
I would like to think that. However, if someone were breaking into my house or harming one of my children or something like that, or someone that could not defend themselves and I had the means to do it, and if that were the only way to stop them, I would probably do it. So that's why I'm undecided.
Okay. Where are you on this one? You agree that it's morally wrong? So you think under any circumstances somebody should kill somebody?
I brought up in church, it's one of the 10 commandments.
Okay.
I'm unsure.
Okay.
I mean, I look at it, people go to war all the time. They have to kill them. If they don't kill them,
You're going to get killed.
they'll get killed. So it's circumstances. Certain circumstances.
Depends on the circumstances. Okay. Good discussion. All right, let's go for one more. I got a lot on killing in here. I'm not going to read one of those. How about would approve of a young couple trying out marriage by living together for 6 months before actually getting married?
How young?
Of age,
How bad?
like 18 or older.
This is agreed.
Okay. Are you over there too? Oh, everybody approves of that. Okay. Anybody say why?
Divorce rate is high.
And that's the only way to really get to know somebody.
Okay. All right. And I'll sit down. You know, it's interesting because that's one of my old questions, and the answer to that has changed a lot over the years. Because I've been doing this for about 20 years.
I'm sure it has.
When you were talking about games, that popped into my head. That just was never done. We didn't do that, and my daughter has said that before she marries, she doesn't want to take that. She
So
Maybe it's more of a commitment then, too.
it's more, yeah.
Okay, so you can see that sometimes we have that differ with each other, value clashes, and it's not always easy to hear opinions from people who have a totally different value from you. Where these are true values, can answer these questions about kind of crazy topics, but if you had to live them, if they really match the definition of value, these values are different. What you believe is the right thing to do. And are you there to change their values? No. You're there to help them to be comfortable with their values. And, I just can't stand listening to that all the time. I want them to think about this in a little deeper way. They need to think about how would they feel about this and how would they feel about that. And so my values have influenced the questions that we have. Now, there were some questions that I just started out with many years ago, and some of them I don't use anymore. For instance, approve of premarital sex. That was one of the questions, and it was approve of premarital sex for boys, and then it was approve of premarital sex for girls.
See, that's where the feminist movement
Yeah?
came in.
That's right. So I used to ask both of those, and obviously, the answers were different for people where they went to agree and disagree and unsure. But that isn't really that relevant anymore as it used to be. And then several of these questions come from a book called A Book of Questions. So if you like talking about things like this, you might have fun picking up a book of questions. My kids say it's a buzzkill. But it's like my favorite thing to do, sit around and talk about, would you be willing to kill a butterfly by pulling off its wings for a 1-week paid vacation? The kids are like, why do you even want to talk about that? Because it's fun. So if you enjoyed it, you might want to pick up that book. You can get it in any Barnes & Noble, The Book of Questions. And then there's some other ones similar to that, one called If and things like that, just to kind of get you to think about things a little differently. There's a book of questions for couples, and my husband and I do that one when we're taking a long trip together. Every once in a while when there's a lull in the conversation, I whip out my little book and say, well, what do you think about this? But the point of all of this tonight is to be aware of ourself, so that we're aware of our own feelings. When you're listening to people talk to you on the phone, you're going to feel some of the feelings that you may be uncomfortable with. You're going to have to later look at those thoughts and say, why do I have those feelings? What's it trying to tell me about me? And do I have the right to tell other people how they should think and what they should do because I have those feelings or thoughts? Sometimes our own values come in conflict with each other. And one really cool exercise to do to find out about your values is called a closed choice, and you have to, or a forced choice. You have pairs of words, and you have to pick between each pair. You have to pick the one you like better. Or you have to rank out of 20 the one you like the most and the one you like the least. And it's really interesting to do that because it forces you to keep looking at, well, do I like this better than I like that? Do I like that better than I like that? And you keep going down until you find out, what do you value the most? What's your really one true, like people will say things like they value God or they value the church more than anything else in the world. But then, if they have a forced choice, and it's, do you value your family? Do you value your freedom? Do you value, then we have to think a little deeper about, do I really value that the most? And it can be really fun to find out, what do you value the most and what ends up being something that, you could really just do without it. You don't care that as much about it as you thought. Or there's so many other things that come first. So that's the end of my talk for tonight. I hope that you got a little self-awareness and values clarified, and I wish you luck with the rest of your sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you very